She sat alone at every ball for 5 years, until the most feared alpha king whispered, "Dance with me." Music floated through the air, a melody both delicate and commanding, guiding the courtiers in a dance of grace and power. Every eye sparkled with expectation, every whisper a rumor, every gesture a hint of ambition or desire. Yet in the midst of this splendor, Lady Seraphine sat alone. For 5 years, she had come to these balls, dressed in gowns that rivaled the sunset in their colors, yet never had a hand been extended toward her. The court had whispered endlessly about her beauty and her mystery, some claiming a curse, others believing her heart too careful, too fearful to allow affection. But Seraphine had learned long ago that curiosity and kindness often drew danger, and danger in Erendor had sharp teeth. Tonight, the hall buzzed louder than usual. Nobles twirled, their gowns and tunics a storm of color. Golden cups of wine gleamed in the hands of the powerful, their eyes darting over each other like hawks. Yet Seraphine remained a quiet shadow near the high windows, her dark hair falling like silk over her shoulders, her sapphire eyes observing without invitation. She had no interest in dances, no desire to be swept up in the politics masked as frivolity. She was safe here, perched above the chaos like a solitary star. That is, until he arrived. King Thalion of Erendor, the Alpha King whose name alone sent shivers through the court, stepped into the hall. His presence was immediate, undeniable. A man of commanding height and striking features, with eyes as dark as the midnight sky and a reputation carved from whispers of ruthlessness, he moved with a quiet power that demanded attention. No one dared meet his gaze for long, and yet all could not help but watch. Seraphine felt it before she saw him. The air shifted, tense and electric, as if the very hall acknowledged his entrance. Her heartbeat accelerated, not from fear, though fear brushed against her thoughts, but from something unfamiliar. Curiosity, excitement, she did not know. She only knew that she had been alone at these balls for 5 long years, and suddenly, for the first time, she felt that someone might truly see her. The courtiers parted as he moved through them, a silent tide of power and grace. He paused only briefly to nod at nobles and dismissives alike, then his gaze landed on her. Time seemed to bend, and in that moment the music softened around her. His eyes held questions she could not yet name, a mixture of challenge and recognition. He came closer, each step deliberate, echoing softly on the polished floors. Seraphine's fingers tightened around the delicate fabric of her gown. She could hear nothing but the thrum of her own pulse as he stopped beside her. "Dance with me," he whispered, his voice low and smooth, carrying authority without demand. The hall seemed to hush around her. Every eye still turned toward them, but it was as if they were suspended in a bubble of possibility. Seraphine's lips parted, uncertain, as she searched his face. There was danger there, undeniably, but there was also something else, something that pulled at her in ways she had spent years denying. She began, then stopped. Her mind raced, a storm of logic and instinct. She had seen men like him before, commanding, dangerous, alluring. They could destroy you with a word or save you if they chose. And yet here he was, offering her something she had never expected: choice. Thalion's gaze softened for the briefest moment, just enough that her heart caught. Then he extended his hand again, patient, silent, unwavering. Seraphine took it. The moment she placed her hand in his, a shiver ran through her, not from fear, but from the strange thrill of possibility. The music swelled as if sensing their union, and Thalion led her to the center of the hall. Every footstep felt like a heartbeat, every turn a brush of fate. They moved together with surprising ease, though neither had danced before. He guided, and she followed, the rhythm of the music syncing with the rhythm of her own pulse. She could feel the heat of his body, the strength beneath the gentle pressure of his hand, and yet she sensed restraint, respect, and curiosity in equal measure. "You've never danced like this before, have you?" he murmured, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I've never danced with anyone like you," she replied softly, her voice almost lost amidst the swirling melody. He chuckled, low and rare, a sound that seemed to vibrate in her chest. "Few dare approach me willingly." "And yet I chose you," she said, surprising even herself with the confidence in her tone. The court faded away as they moved, and for the first time in years, Seraphine felt unbound. She had spent so long in the shadows, careful, quiet, observing, but now she felt as if she were a flame dancing in the wind, alive and unafraid. And yet, even in this rare moment of freedom, unease lingered. Thalion's eyes darkened suddenly, a flicker of something unspoken passing over his face. She noticed it, a shadow that seemed to whisper of dangers unseen. She wanted to ask, to understand, but the moment slipped away as easily as it had arrived. "You're not like the others," he said, his voice carrying just enough for her ears alone. "There's strength in you and something more, something I do not yet understand." "And you frighten me," she replied honestly, not out of defiance but truth. "I frighten most," he admitted, letting her hand go for a brief second, only to place it back in hers. "But perhaps for once fear will not rule us tonight." They continued to dance, their movements a silent conversation. Thalion's power was undeniable, but Seraphine felt that beneath it lay restraint and curiosity, a yearning she could not name. And as she gazed into his eyes, she wondered if he could see her, truly see her, beyond the beauty and mystery she presented. Then, as if the world conspired to remind them of their fragility, a hush fell over the hall. The music faltered for a heartbeat, and a servant rushed forward with a message. Thalion's jaw tightened, and Seraphine sensed the weight of it before it was spoken. He turned his gaze on her, dark eyes unreadable. "This is only the beginning," he said softly, almost a promise. Seraphine felt a thrill of fear mixed with something else, a curious hope. Her life, so long lived in shadows and solitude, had shifted in an instant. The Alpha King, the most feared man in the kingdom, had asked her to dance. And in that single gesture, she realized that her destiny was no longer hers alone. The ballroom continued its rhythm, but their connection lingered like a spark in the dark. Every glance, every touch, hinted at secrets waiting to be revealed, challenges to face, and a bond neither fully understood yet. And as Thalion led her to the edge of the hall, bending low to whisper in her ear, Seraphine's heart pounded with a mix of dread and longing. "There is more to this night, more than a dance. Are you ready to see it?" Seraphine met his gaze, a mixture of fear and determination in her sapphire eyes. "I am." And in that moment the court faded, the music became a distant echo, and the first step of a journey neither of them could predict had begun. The night stretched before them, full of shadows and whispers, danger and desire. And for the first time in 5 long years, Seraphine felt truly alive. The night after the grand ball, the palace of Urindor lay cloaked in silence. Moonlight spilled through tall windows, casting silver lines across the marble floors and the empty halls. Most of the kingdom slept, yet Lady Seraphine could not. Her mind replayed the moment King Thalion had whispered for her to dance. The memory clung to her like a spell, both thrilling and terrifying. She wandered the quiet corridors, her fingers brushing the carved banisters. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and candle wax, a scent that seemed to follow her wherever she went. She could still feel his hand in hers, guiding her effortlessly, the warmth of his touch and the strength beneath it. Her heart ached with longing, but also with unease. He was the Alpha King, feared, powerful, and untouchable, yet he had chosen her. Why? Seraphine tried to answer herself, but the question led only to shadows. She could sense that something beyond mere attraction bound them together, something old and dangerous that hovered at the edges of the palace. And as she paced, a whisper of wind stirred, almost like a warning. Meanwhile, in the grand chambers of the king, Thalion stared into the darkness. His fingers traced the rim of his goblet, but he did not drink. His thoughts were consumed by the girl who had dared to accept his invitation. Most of the court avoided him, fearful of his temper and his secrets. Yet Seraphine had stepped into his world without fear or submission, without calculation. That alone intrigued him, even unsettled him. He remembered the moment he saw her alone at the ball for the first time in 5 years. The way she had held herself, distant and unbending, yet poised like a queen of her own invisible realm. Most would have run at the sight of him, bowed in fear or flattery. She had done neither, and when she had placed her hand in his, he had felt something unexpected, a connection that went deeper than curiosity or desire, something raw, fragile, and daring. But Thalion's instincts warned him. The kingdom had shadows he could not control, forces older than his rule, and now they were stirring. The girl he had invited to dance was entangled in a destiny he did not yet fully understand, and that destiny could destroy them both. The next morning, Seraphine received a summons to the royal library. Her pulse quickened, a mixture of anticipation and dread coiling in her chest. The library was vast, filled with the scent of old parchment and polished wood. Sunlight slanted through stained glass, painting patterns across the floors and shelves. And there he was, Thalion, standing by a tall window, the morning light casting half his face in shadow. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm, but his dark eyes held that intensity that always left her breathless. "Good morning," she replied, trying to steady her voice, though her fingers itched with nerves. "I asked you here because there are matters you need to know," he began, stepping closer. "Not every story told in these halls is harmless. Some truths are dangerous, and some are tied to you." Seraphine frowned, confused and wary. "Tied to me? What do you mean?" He reached for a book on a nearby shelf, opening it to a page filled with handwritten notes and faded illustrations of strange symbols. "Your family," he said softly, "has carried a curse for generations. A shadow that has followed your bloodline, waiting for the right moment to strike, and it is stirring now." Seraphine's breath caught. She had heard whispers about her family, about secrets buried in the past, but she had never imagined they could be real, or that they could reach into the palace itself. "What kind of curse?" she asked, her voice trembling. Thalion's gaze softened, but the shadow in his eyes did not fade. "It is tied to power and to choice. The wrong move could bring ruin. The right one could save everything, but it will not be easy, and it will not be without risk." Seraphine swallowed, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. She had spent years in careful solitude, but now the world seemed to call to her, daring her to step forward. And in that moment, she realized that she did not have to face this alone. Thalion was there, powerful and relentless, but also strangely protective. "You're not just telling me this because it is your duty, are you?" she asked softly. "No," he admitted, stepping closer so that the sunlight framed him like fire and shadow. "I'm telling you because I cannot ignore it, and because I trust you, more than I trust anyone." Seraphine felt her heart twist at his words. Trust was dangerous in Urandor, but the weight of it in his voice made her feel lighter, almost brave. The day passed in whispers and quiet study. Thalion guided her through the history of the curse, revealing the ancient symbols and the old warnings hidden in the margins of dusty books. He was patient, yet there was a tension in the air, an unspoken understanding that time was slipping away, that danger was creeping closer with each passing hour. By evening, the palace seemed to hold its breath. Shadows lengthened in the halls, stretching like dark fingers. Seraphine felt a chill, though the fire in her chamber burned steadily. She had been alone for so long, and yet now, with Thalion's presence near, she felt a strange courage she had never known. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the corridors beyond. Both of them froze. The sound was sharp and unnatural, and it sent a jolt through her chest. "Stay here," Thalion commanded, his voice low but commanding as he moved toward the source of the noise. Seraphine hesitated, But then she remembered the stories he had told her of dangers lurking in shadows and of courage born in moments of fear. She followed, moving silently beside him. The corridor was dark, lit only by flickering torches. At the far end a figure lurked, an emissary of the curse, dark and silent, its eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. Seraphine's heart pounded. She could feel the ancient power that lingered in the air, a weight pressing down on her chest. Thalion moved forward swiftly, placing himself between her and the threat. His presence was a shield, but he did not strike immediately. He waited, assessing, calculating, his dark eyes narrowing. "You should not have come here," he said, voice sharp, controlled like steel. The figure hissed, advancing slowly. Then something inside Seraphine shifted. Fear surged, but so did a strange, new strength. She felt her hands glow with a faint, silvery light, the same light she had glimpsed in the books earlier that day. She did not understand it fully, but instinctively she raised her hands. A surge of energy flared outward and the emissary froze, recoiling as if struck by an invisible force. Thalion's eyes widened, not in fear but in surprise and admiration. He had known she was powerful, but he had not expected this. "Step back," he commanded, and she did, though her heart raced. "You have more strength than I realized." Seraphine's voice trembled, but she spoke with resolve. I did what I had to do. I will not let it harm us." Thalion reached for her hand, gripping it gently. "And you won't have to face it alone. Ever." For a moment the two of them stood in the corridor, their hands joined, the glow of her power casting shadows that danced on the walls. A bond had formed, not just of attraction but of trust and shared destiny. Yet even as relief washed over them, Seraphine felt the weight of what lay ahead. The curse was real. Dangerous forces were moving, and their lives and the fate of the kingdom were entwined with it. She realized that the dance from the night before had been only the beginning. The real challenge had just begun. As they returned to the safety of the library, Thalion's hand remained in hers, a silent promise. "You've changed everything tonight," he said softly. "And yet the night is far from over." Seraphine nodded, though fear and excitement battled within her. She had glimpsed the darkness of the kingdom, and now she had glimpsed her own power, and the undeniable pull she felt toward him. She knew that the coming days would test her courage, her heart, and the strength of the bond that had begun in a simple dance. And in the shadows beyond the library windows, the night seemed to stir. Something ancient and watching, something tied to the curse and to Seraphine's family, moved silently. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and a whisper of wind carried a single promise. The game had begun, and the pieces were only now being set. Seraphine took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the world around her and the thrum of her own heart. She was no longer alone, not in the dance, not in the palace, and not in the destiny that awaited. And yet, even as courage filled her chest, she knew one undeniable truth. The shadows were coming, and when they arrived, nothing would ever be the same. The dawn in Erendor rose slowly, painting the castle towers in hues of rose and gold. Seraphine stood by her window, staring at the courtyard below, her thoughts restless. The events of the night before haunted her. Her power had awakened, and she could feel it thrumming within her like a caged storm. The emissary, whatever it had been, had vanished, leaving only a lingering chill and a silent warning. Yet she was not afraid. Not entirely. Fear had always shadowed her life, but now she felt something else, a cautious determination. The Alpha King, Thalion, had stood beside her, protecting her, yet never overshadowing her strength. That delicate balance of power and trust was something she had never known before, and it frightened her almost as much as it thrilled her. Thalion appeared quietly behind her, moving with the same fluid grace that made him feared and admired. "You are restless," he observed, his dark eyes studying her with quiet intensity. "I cannot stop thinking about last night," she admitted. "The emissary, the curse. Everything feels like it is moving too fast." He stepped closer, resting his hand gently on her shoulder. The touch was warm, grounding, but also electrifying. "It is moving fast," he said softly, "but you are stronger than you know, and stronger than you realize I expect you to be." Seraphine's eyes met his, and she saw a flicker of something beneath the usual command, the shadow of vulnerability or perhaps hope. "I do not want to be just a tool in this curse," she said quietly. "I want to understand it, to face it, not just because it is my duty, but because I have to." Thalion nodded, a rare softness touching his features. "Then we face it together. I will not ask you to bow or obey me blindly. You are not a pawn, Seraphine. You are a partner if you will allow it." For a moment, she felt the weight of centuries of expectation lift, and a strange sense of warmth settled in her chest. Trust, she realized, was a fragile thing, but also a force capable of moving mountains. And Thalion had given her the first gift of it, a promise to stand with her, not over her. Their mourning was interrupted by a messenger from the court. "Your Majesties," he said, bowing, though his voice trembled, "disturbances have been reported in the outer forests. Villagers speak of strange lights and shadowy figures moving in the night. They fear the curse is spreading." Seraphine felt her pulse quicken. The forest had always been a place of whispered danger, a threshold to the unknown. And now the shadows were not content to remain distant, they were encroaching on the kingdom itself. Thalion's jaw tightened. "Prepare the guards. And you," he said, turning to Seraphine, "must come with me. The forest holds answers and risks. You will need your strength." Her heart skipped. The thought of venturing into the unknown, facing whatever force lurked there, was terrifying. Yet alongside the fear was an undeniable thrill. She had been sheltered for too long, hidden behind walls of caution and solitude. Now the world demanded her courage, and she realized she wanted to rise to it. The journey to the forest was quiet, the carriage gliding over winding paths lined with ancient trees. The morning sun barely penetrated the thick canopy, leaving patches of golden light among shadows that seemed alive. Seraphine held Thalion's hand as they dismounted, the warmth of his grip a steady anchor in the tension that pulsed between them. The forest whispered around them, leaves rustling as if speaking in a language only the shadows understood. Suddenly, a soft light flickered ahead. It was not the natural light of dawn, but something unnatural, shimmering with silver and green, moving like a living thing. "There," Thalion said, his voice a low murmur. "That is the source. The curse manifests in forms of shadow and light. Be ready." Seraphine nodded, though her heart raced. She felt the power within her responding instinctively, a soft glow emanating from her hands, mirroring the strange light in the forest. Step by step they approached, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The figure emerged from the shadows, a creature not entirely human, not entirely shadow. Its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, and a strange energy hummed in the air. Seraphine's heart raced, but Thalion's presence at her side steadied her. "You are not afraid," the creature hissed, voice like silk brushing steel. "Neither of you." "I am not here to fight blindly," Thalion replied, his tone commanding but controlled. "We are here to end the curse, not to be enslaved by it." The creature tilted its head, studying them both. Then, with a sudden motion, it surged forward, a blur of shadow and light. Seraphine felt fear rise, but also clarity. This time, she did not hesitate. She focused, drawing the power she had felt the night before, shaping it, pushing it outward. The light from her hands struck the creature, illuminating the forest with a brilliant flash. It recoiled, and Thalion moved, striking with precision, guiding her without overshadowing her effort. Together they pushed the shadow back, step by step, force by force. Finally, with a roar that shook the trees, the creature dissipated into a swirl of silver mist. The forest grew silent, save for the soft rustle of leaves. Seraphine's heart pounded, sweat glistening on her forehead, but she felt a surge of triumph. She had faced the curse, not as a pawn, not as a frightened girl, but as herself, strong, capable, alive. Thalion turned to her, his dark eyes wide with admiration and something softer, almost awe. "You are incredible," he said quietly. "I knew you were strong, but this is beyond what I imagined." Seraphine's cheeks warmed, but she shook her head. "We did it together. You guided me, but I chose to act. I had to." Thalion stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink to only the two of them. "I see now," he said softly. "I have underestimated the strength that lies within you. And I have underestimated what it means to trust someone so completely." Her chest tightened. His words were both confession and promise. She wanted to speak, to tell him that she felt the same, but the forest around them hummed with residual energy, and she could sense that the shadows were not gone, merely retreating. "We cannot linger," Thalion said, returning to his commanding tone. "The curse will not wait, and neither will those who wish to use it against the kingdom." Seraphine nodded, though a pang of disappointment struck her. The connection between them was raw and undeniable, yet the world demanded caution. Still, the bond had deepened, tested in fire, strengthened in shadows. As they returned to the castle, the sun was setting, casting the halls in a golden glow that made everything feel fragile, fleeting, beautiful. Seraphine could feel Thalion's presence beside her, not as a master or ruler, but as an equal, as a partner in the battle ahead. That evening, the court awaited them. News of their encounter in the forest had spread quickly, whispered with awe and fear. Some praised the courage of the Alpha King and the mysterious lady. Others whispered that the curse was too powerful to confront. Seraphine felt eyes on her, some admiring, some calculating, but she held her head high. She was no longer merely the silent observer. She had stepped into her own power, and she would not retreat. Thalion approached her at the feast, his dark eyes meeting hers across the crowded hall. He extended a hand, not commanding, not demanding, but inviting. Seraphine took it, and for a brief moment the court faded, leaving only the unspoken connection between them. "You were extraordinary," he whispered, close enough that only she could hear. "Tonight you showed the courage of a queen, and perhaps of something more." She felt a flutter in her chest, warmth mingled with longing. "I had to, for the kingdom and for myself." Thalion's gaze softened, yet there was a shadow lingering behind it, a reminder of the dangers still ahead. "Then we continue," he said, "together, no matter what comes." And as the night deepened, Seraphine realized that her life had changed irrevocably. She was no longer alone, not in power, not in courage, and not in heart. The dance they had begun at the ball had evolved into something far greater, a partnership forged in trust, tested in shadow, and destined to face the darkness ahead. Yet even as hope glimmered in her chest, the palace walls seemed to murmur with secrets. Somewhere in the distance, hidden eyes watched, calculating, waiting for the moment when the courage of the young lady and the strength of the Alpha King would be tested again. The game was far from over, and Seraphine knew, deep in her heart, that the next move could change everything, forever. The castle of Urindor was restless that night. Dark clouds gathered above the towers, and the wind whispered secrets through the battlements. The kingdom seemed to hold its breath, as if sensing the final confrontation that approached. Lady Seraphine stood at the window of her chamber, her hands resting lightly on the sill. The events of the past days had changed her. She was no longer the silent observer, the lonely figure at every ball. She had faced shadows, wielded her own power, and discovered a strength that even she had not fully believed existed. But tonight, the weight of destiny pressed heavier than ever. The curse, once a distant threat, now loomed at the gates of the castle, and the air felt thick with anticipation. Seraphine knew that whatever happened in the coming hours would determine not only her life, but the future of the entire kingdom. Thalion entered quietly, his dark cloak brushing against the floor. His expression was unreadable, but Seraphine could feel the tension coiled beneath his calm exterior. "The forest told me what we must face," he said softly, stepping closer. The emissary we saw before was only a messenger. The curse has grown stronger and its power seeks to engulf everything. Tonight, we confront it. Seraphine turned to face him, the moonlight casting silver patterns across their faces. I am ready, she said, her voice steady though her heart raced. Together, he nodded, his hand brushing hers, a gesture of solidarity and trust. Then we move as one. Whatever comes, we face it together. The journey to the heart of the forest was tense. The trees loomed like silent guardians, their branches twisting toward the sky as if warning travelers away. Yet Seraphine walked with confidence now, her power pulsing like a steady flame within her. She could feel Thalion's presence beside her, not as a protector alone but as a partner, sharing the responsibility, sharing the courage. As they reached the clearing where the shadows seemed thickest, an eerie silence greeted them. The moonlight barely pierced the darkness, and in its pale glow the curse manifested, a swirling mass of shadow and energy, alive and threatening. Eyes glimmered in its form, reflecting malice and ancient knowledge, and a low hum of power vibrated through the air. You must focus, Thalion said, his voice low but firm. Fear will feed it, doubt will empower it. Trust your strength, Seraphine, trust us. She inhaled deeply, letting her hands glow with the familiar silver light. The air around her seemed to respond, shimmering as if acknowledging her command. Thalion stepped forward, his own presence a shield and a sword, commanding the shadows to hesitate. The curse surged forward suddenly, twisting and striking like a living storm. Seraphine met it with a wave of light, forcing it back step by step. Thalion followed her lead, striking with precision, guiding her when necessary but never overtaking her. They moved as one, a dance of light and shadow, courage and power. For hours the battle raged. The curse tested them, probing for weaknesses, tempting them with fear and doubt. Seraphine felt exhaustion claw at her limbs, yet she pushed forward, her determination unbroken. She could feel Thalion beside her, his energy matching hers, and together they formed a barrier of strength neither could have achieved alone. At the peak of the confrontation, the curse coalesced into a single figure, a dark, towering form with eyes like burning coals. Its voice echoed, deep and ancient, shaking the trees around them. You cannot defeat me, it hissed. Your hearts are weak, your bond is fragile. Seraphine's hands glowed brighter, her energy pulsing outward, and she stepped closer. You are wrong, she said, her voice steady, full of conviction. Our hearts are strong because we face this together. You cannot break what is united by trust and courage. Thalion reached for her hand, and their joined power surged in a brilliant flash of silver light. The shadow shrieked and writhed, but the force of their combined will pressed it back. Step by step, they advanced, their light pushing the darkness into retreat. The final moment arrived when Seraphine realized the truth. The curse fed on fear, isolation, and doubt. The only way to destroy it was not with strength alone, but with connection, with trust, with love. She looked into Thalion's eyes and saw her own resolve mirrored there. Together, they poured their hearts into the light, letting the bond between them shine brighter than the darkness around them. The shadow screamed one last time and then dissipated into nothingness, leaving the clearing bathed in the serene glow of moonlight. Silence followed, heavy and complete, until the wind carried the soft rustle of leaves, gentle and calming. The curse was broken. Seraphine sank to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. Thalion knelt beside her, taking her hand in both of his. You have done it, he whispered, awe and admiration in his voice. We have done it together. Tears glimmered in Seraphine's eyes, not of fear, not of pain, but of relief and understanding. We could not have done it apart, she said softly. It required both of us. It required trust and something more. Thalion's gaze softened, and for the first time the mask of the Alpha King fell away. His eyes revealed vulnerability, gratitude, and a deep, unspoken longing. I was wrong to fear my own heart, he admitted. I feared what I might become, what I might lose. But with you, I understand I do not have to fear. I can face anything as long as you are beside me." Seraphine's heart ached at the honesty in his words. She had always feared the power he wielded, the reputation he carried, yet now she understood the man beneath it, the man capable of love, capable of trust, capable of transformation. The forest seemed to breathe around them, the moonlight casting gentle patterns on their faces as they rose to their feet. Together, they walked back to the castle, no words necessary, for their bond had been forged in fire and shadow. They had faced the impossible and emerged not only victorious, but changed. Back at the castle, the court awaited news of the night's events. Whispers spread quickly. The curse was broken. The Alpha King had been accompanied by the mysterious Lady Seraphine, and together they had confronted the darkness. Eyes that once doubted Seraphine now regarded her with awe and respect. She had stepped from shadow into light, claiming her place not just as a figure of mystery, but as a force in her own right. That evening, the grand ballroom was open once again, yet the atmosphere was transformed. No longer a place of mere ceremony, it felt sacred, a space where courage and love had triumphed over darkness. Seraphine entered, her gown shimmering like silver and sapphire, and Thalion followed, his presence commanding yet gentle. He extended his hand to her, the invitation clear not as a test, not as a command, but as an acknowledgement of what they had shared. She took it, and as they stepped into the center of the hall, the music began, a soft, melodic tune that seemed to honor their journey, their struggles, and their bond. They danced slowly, deliberately, each movement a conversation of unspoken truths. Seraphine could feel the strength of their connection, the trust, and the love that had grown between them. The court watched in awe, yet their eyes could not touch the intensity of what unfolded in that dance. "You have changed everything," Thalion whispered, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. "Not just the kingdom, not just me, but yourself. You are stronger, braver, and brighter than I ever imagined." Seraphine smiled softly, her heart full. "And you have taught me that trust is strength," she replied. "That love is not weakness, but courage." The dance continued, the music carrying them through the night, through shadow and light, through fear and triumph. In that moment, nothing else existed, only the bond they had forged, tested in darkness, now radiant in its own power. And as the final notes of music faded into the high ceilings, Seraphine and Thalion stood together, their hands entwined, hearts unguarded. The kingdom was safe, the curse broken, and their journey, though only beginning, had already transformed them. Outside, the night held no more shadows, only a sky of stars, vast and eternal. And beneath it, two souls, once alone, now united, stood ready to face the future together. The world could challenge them again, danger could return. But they had learned the greatest lesson of all, that in trust, in courage, and in love, even the darkest shadows could be defeated and light could prevail. Seraphine looked at Thalion, a quiet smile on her lips. "Together," she whispered. "Together," he echoed, holding her hand firmly, the bond between them unbreakable. And in that moment, the Alpha King and the Lady of Light began a new chapter, not of fear, not of isolation, but of partnership, of hope, and of love that could withstand any darkness.